Hey guys, welcome to the round 15 AFL betting trend report preview show for the upcoming round. Just the 6 games again this weekend. So we're going to go through each one of them, go through what the odds are, what the odds were in their previous 5 matchups, who's been winning, covering, what the total line has been, whether their games have been going over or under, and any other betting trends between each one of those matchups. And also the ways that I'm considering betting on each of these games. Before we get into that, though, I just want to quickly recap last weekend's games where the favorites won all 6 games last weekend. They covered 4 of the 6. The only 2 underdogs who covered the spread in their games were St Kilda against the Brisbane Lions in the opening game. And then North Melbourne covered the spread against Collingwood. It was a 40+ spread for that game. Big comeback from Collingwood to get up and win that game. They were the shortest price favorite of the round and was the closest margin of all the games. Also this weekend, 4 of the 6 games went over the total points line. And 3 of the games went over 230 points. I think it's 6 games overall in the season now, where the final score has been over 230, and 3 of them came in this round. So now looking ahead to this weekend's matchups, starts on Friday night with a really, really good game. Two teams coming off their bye in Carlton and Geelong. They met earlier in the season in round 7. Geelong were 5.5-point favorites and won the game 118 to 105. So covered the spread in that matchup. They've now covered 3 of the past 4 versus Carlton, and they've also won 6 of the past 8. So good record here for Geelong against Carlton. However, if you look prior to the bye, both these teams come into this matchup in kind of opposite form. Carlton have won 3 straight, including games against Gold Coast, Port Adelaide, and Essendon. Whereas Geelong come into this matchup in really, really poor form. Their only recent win has been against Richmond. Aside from that, they've lost 5 of their past 6 games. So definitely trending the wrong direction. They've been majorly impacted by injuries, which obviously has an effect on that. And that's why paying attention to lineups, and for me personally, I don't really do much betting at all until team lineups are out, which for the most part happens on Thursday nights, and then make decisions off that. Obviously, you can go through the injury reports, know potentially which players are going to be coming back in those games. However, you can never be certain. Sometimes they want to put that player back in through the VFL, etc., to get the match fitness up before going straight into the AFL side. So for those reasons, that's why majority of my bets, at least over 90%, all happen once teams are announced. Anyway, looking at this game, Carlton are 9.5-point favorites, and there's kind of 2 ways I'm leaning on going on this game. One stronger than the other, though. I do like Carlton to win, but I'm just not 100% happy with this line, the -9.5. They're $1.58 on the money line, so am considering if we could get them $1.65 to $1.70. I would probably take Carlton to just win the game, but not on the line. And then the play that I actually like a little bit more is over 173.5. When they met earlier in the season, there was 223 points scored and it went over 170.5. Total's only going up 3 points since that game back in round 7, which really wasn't all that long ago. That was the game where Geelong won, and then their poor form streak started after that. With both sides coming off the bye, I think this game can definitely be another shootout. Both sides are top 4 attacking sides overall on the season. Carlton ranked 3rd, Geelong ranked 4th overall in the league. And both sides are bottom 5 defensive sides, both ranked 14th and 15th in points conceded. So that alone just sets it up to be a high scoring game. That's definitely my preferred way of betting on this game, is taking that over, but also definitely interested in Carlton to win. Port Adelaide versus Brisbane. Brisbane are small favorites here, -3.5. The home side has a great record in this matchup. They've won 8 of the past 9. And they've also covered 4 of the past 5. You can see a lot of their recent matchups going back to 2020. Brisbane has been the home side in 4 of those 5 games, and this time playing at the Adelaide Oval. The Lions' recent matches there haven't been all that great. So even though they have a really good record against Port Adelaide, covering 7 of the past 9 and winning 6 of the past 7, it's not an ideal situation for them. However, they probably come into this game in better form of the two sides. They've won 3 of their past 4, whereas Port have now dropped their past 2 games after losing to GWS. Brisbane also get a couple of extra days rest, considering they played on the Friday night, whereas Port Adelaide played the late game on Sunday. So that sets up well for the Lions. I do think the odds are about right. I do have Brisbane small favorites for this game. The play I like the most, though, in this matchup is the over 167.5. Their recent matchups have been going over the last 2, yet we're getting a lower line than the last matchup at the Adelaide over, which was 171.5. Both these sides capable of scoring plenty of points, and this venue does set up for it very well. Also, looking at scoring shots per inside 50, Port Adelaide ranked 3rd in the league, Brisbane ranked 9th, and from a defensive perspective, Port Adelaide ranked 13th in the league, giving up scoring shots and per inside 50, and Brisbane ranked 12th. So that sets up for there to be a high number of scoring shots, have fairly low total for the game. So as long as these two teams kick fairly straight, which Port Adelaide are the most inaccurate side in the competition, is the concern. But as long as there should be enough shots, which should give it the opportunity to go over. So definitely keen on the over 167.5. GWS versus Sydney Swans. Swans minus 12.5. This game, Swans are in really, really good form. Obviously, very, very hard to beat. GWS bounced back with a good win over Port Adelaide, and they were very inaccurate, so could have won that game by a fair bit more. The Swans have won and covered 4 of the past 5 versus GWS. Interestingly, obviously, they're both Sydney teams, but the team listed as the away side has covered 13 of the past 17 in this matchup. So a lot of that sets up towards Sydney being very hard to beat. With the line at minus 12.5, I don't think it's a bad line. I have this number at 13.5, so pretty much very similar to the bookies line. Do think Sydney win the game. The way I haven't fully decided how I'm going to play this game. However, I do think the way these teams have been playing this season, it's possible GWS could get the jump on them. GWS are one of the best first quarter teams overall in the league, where the Swans are actually kind of average mid-pack overall this season. But from quarter time onwards, basically the number 1, number 2 side in every quarter. The concerning thing for GWS is they're one of the worst fourth quarter sides. So I do think Sydney will be able to roll over the top of them in the fourth quarter especially. But from a pre-game perspective, I never like taking second half or final quarter lines purely based on those things, because you don't always know what's going to happen throughout the game that's going to lead to that point. You know, sometimes you can take a team to cover the fourth quarter. However, you know, they might be already up by 50, 60 points by that stage and take their foot off the gas and then, you know, aren't completely pushing. So you got to kind of look for live betting opportunities to really take advantage of those situations. However, I do think the Swans overall win this game. We're getting a fairly small line. So, and to be honest, like I could play this a similar way to the Carlton Geelong game and just take the Swans on the money line around that $1.50 mark. Do think that Swans second half is a really good play in this game as well. So that could set up really nicely. Melbourne versus North Melbourne. The Demons minus 32.5 here. This game really depends on how North Melbourne are going to come through their performance last week. They won 2 weeks ago against West Coast, then basically had the game won against Collingwood at halftime last week, but were massively overrun. How they come through that is going to be key. With Clarkson coaching, I don't think it's going to be a major issue, even though they are a young group. So I think they're going to come through that game well. They have covered 3 of the past 4 versus Melbourne. They don't necessarily have a bad record in this matchup. Obviously, they haven't been winning games. Melbourne have won the past 5, but they've been covering their expected performance in this matchup. This, however, is the lowest line that we've seen in recent times, going back to 2020. Majority of the time, that line has been 45.5 or greater. I do think North Melbourne are a chance of covering this spread. They've gotten their scoring going, which has been key. They're now averaging over 70 points a game. So lifted off the bottom of the rankings in that category. And Melbourne aren't all that far ahead. There's not a great deal between these two sides from an attacking perspective. Melbourne, obviously, a much better defensive side. However, that hasn't completely been the case over recent times. So North Melbourne definitely a chance of hanging around in this matchup and keeping it close, especially in the first half. If we look at Melbourne's not really a great first half side. They're ranked 13th in first quarter win percentage, 10th in second quarter win percentage, whereas in the second half, they're a lot better. So also looking at potentially a first half line in this game. A big betting trend for it as well is 11 of the past 13 head-to-head have gone over the total points line. We're getting a lower number than the previous two meetings, which were 173.5 and both went over, down to 170.5 this time. I find it a little bit hard to take the over though. Even though we have such a strong trend pushing towards it, both these sides ranked in the bottom 5 in scoring, and Melbourne are still a good defensive side, ranked overall 3rd in the league. So probably going to stay away from the over. I don't want to have too many overs on the cards because do like the over in the Carlton Geelong, like the over in Port Brisbane. I'm not completely keen on it, but I do think the number's slightly low there in the GWS versus Sydney game as well. So lean towards North at the plus 32.5 and also at the first half line. Essendon versus West Coast. This is a game that I'm probably going to stay away from. Look for some player props on it. Essendon minus 34.5. West Coast do have a really good record here, covering 3 of the past 4 versus the Bombers. However, Essendon have won the past 3, but West Coast has been hanging around. But we're only getting a 34.5 line here for the Eagles on the road. If this game was played over in WA, then be definitely interested in West Coast to cover. But we'd probably be getting a plus 15.5-ish line for that game. But playing in Melbourne, Essendon should be too good, but just don't want to get involved in that matchup. And then Fremantle versus Gold Coast, final game of the round. Fremantle minus 15.5, total 156.5. 6 of the past 7 games between these two sides have gone under the total points line. The only one that went over was the last matchup where they met in round 5 last season. Fremantle won 100 points to 90. So went well over that 160.5 number. We're getting a lower line here, 156.5. Do think that number is slightly low, but there is showers predicted on Sunday that may impact this matchup. Whether that hits or not is obviously, always a 50-50 when it comes to the weather. But do think the total is just a few points too low. Have it closer to the 160 mark. But just probably going to stay away from it. And from a line perspective, I do think they've pretty much nailed the line spot on here. If you look at the overall stats of both sides, there's hardly anything between them. They're very, very even. Gold Coast, the better attacking side, Fremantle, the better defensive side, but when you blend it, there's not a great deal between them. However, Gold Coast haven't been able to travel this season, and playing Fremantle over in Perth is one of the harder trips. And I think Fremantle get the job done, but I don't think it's going to be a total blowout. So I like Freo 1-39 in the final game of the round. And especially if it is a slightly lower scoring game, if there is a bit of rain around, that should help it even further land within that margin. So Fremantle 1-39. So to recap the way I'm thinking right now, Carlton versus Geelong, looking at the over 173.5 and also Carlton to win. Port versus Brisbane, like the over in that game, 167.5. Slight lean towards the Lions to win based on their current form. GWS versus Sydney, like the Swans to win that game. Haven't fully decided whether I want the money line or the handicap in that matchup. Melbourne versus North Melbourne, like North Melbourne, plus 32.5 and also the first half line. We're going to be going with props for the Essendon versus West Coast game, and then Fremantle versus Gold Coast, like Freo 1-39. So that's how this weekend is looking. If you like videos like this, you like analyzing stats, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I post videos like this all season long. Really appreciate you guys tuning in for these videos. Hopefully it's helping you with your betting decisions each week. Big part of making money betting is the research you do. So that's why I wanted to post videos like this, post videos where we're going through the statistics of every single matchup and breaking down where teams' strengths are, where their weaknesses are, so that when you're putting a bet on, you know exactly why you're putting that bet on because you're predicting how this game's going to be played. Like so many people out there, their betting's just like jam-packed with bad habits. They don't put in the research that's actually required to win long term. Like, yeah, they're going to have winning bets here and there, but to be able to consistently win every month and every year, you have to be able to put in that research and then stay disciplined with your staking. So hopefully these videos are helping you guys level up your betting. If you want to learn more, make sure you check the links in the description. That's where you can get access to the bet finders and all the tools I use for AFL in particular, but also other sports, where you can see exactly everything I'm betting with the breakdowns, and also some additional trainings and stuff to help you implement the strategies of what it takes in order to be a profitable sports bettor. So definitely check that out. Good luck this weekend.